we had the Al-Quds Day rally, which is an annual rally organized by Iran. And there were people in the rally with pictures of Khamenei, flags of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I've got a video of this guy who's praising Khamenei, saying, I'm at your command. I mean, how much more do you want in the open?
Yeah.
And every policeman that I was talking to that were policing that protest, they had no idea what new national security thing was. They had no idea what foreign influence registration scheme was. So we have this crazy situation where the legislators keep coming up with legislations. We have these officials that keep going on about this legislation is a game changer. And the security forces on the ground have no idea about the legislation. And nothing is getting done because no one in the establishment wants to be the one to push the button. I'll go and talk to a lot of politicians, MPs, etc., right? And I'll tell them about Tehran's influence and, the Iranian outlets and, all the misdemeanor that they're doing here and everything. And they're all horrified and they're all like, shake their heads and agree with you. And then you say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And it's just nothing. No one wants to be the one to push the button because they're all scared of the consequences. Look, we had the Justice Minister in the previous Tory government. What was his name? It was the MP for Finchley as well. Mike Freer, I think.
I think so,
He resigned because the intimidation that he faced from Islamists, from the letters he was getting, from the phone calls he was getting, they tried to set his office on fire and everything. If the Justice Minister is too intimidated and he resigns, what chance is there for me and you?
Hello everyone, welcome to the World of Momos podcast, and on this episode of Reflections and Reactions, I have Potkin Azermehr with me, and we will talk a bit about the Islamist infiltration within Britain, if it's happening or if it's not happening, what does the future look like, how can it be reversed and stuff like that. But before we start that, we'll ask Potkin to tell us a bit about his background, like a bit of background story and stuff. So hi there, how are you?
Hello, Momos. It's really good to be on your show and speaking to you directly. I've read a lot about you. I've subscribed to your channel. I've watched some of your videos, but I think this is the first time we're talking to each other face to face directly.
Yeah, and I've also been watching some of your podcasts and stuff. The link will be in the description below, and also I'll put on the click over here for people. It's really good. Like you break down things really clearly for people as well. So it's a really important podcast for people to actually go to. So it's really good to actually, because I've been following you on Twitter and stuff. So I really wanted to talk to you in person. But tell us a bit about yourself. Like, what's your journey been like?
So I was born in Iran, and I lived there for my first 12 years. And then my father decided to send me to a boarding school in England. Both my parents were school teachers in Iran, so we didn't come from an affluent family. But at the time, an Iranian middle-class family with a bit of sacrifice was able to do that because, the school fees were about £3,000 a year at the time. The exchange rate, it was still the Shah's time, it was very favourable. You'd get like 7 units of Iranian money to £1.
That's not bad.
Yeah, so even though I came from a very ordinary family, I ended up in a boarding school in England. And the reason my dad decided to send me to a boarding school was for 2 reasons. One, because he wanted me to stay away from politics.
That didn't work.
Yeah. And 2, I used to sort of not be content with the textbooks at school. I was used to read other things and go further. I remember I would do the math stuff that they used to give us at school. And then I used to sort of buy all these other maths books, more advanced books about numbers theories and, all these unsolved problems and things like that. And he thought that the Iranian schools were not adequate enough for me. So he was hoping that by sending me to a school in England, I would get a better education where it'd be more sort of like free thinking, where the science classes would have proper laboratories, because we didn't really have that in Iran. They used to teach us science, but we didn't have a laboratory, for example. But what happened was, both being school teachers, they were very disciplinarians and they were very strict. And so suddenly I was sort of like on my own at the age of 12 in a different country, in a new
Yeah.
environment, and I could do what I like. There was no parents to supervise me. And, I started making some rogue friends and getting into mischief, sort of things that I wouldn't do when I was with my parents. So I didn't do as well as my father thought I would do. I mean, I got a master's degree in engineering. I've worked as an engineer for a few years. I had good, well-paid jobs. I was a database consultant. I was a business intelligence consultant. But my dad was hoping that I would be a Nobel Prize winner or something, or some exceptional scientist or mathematician or something, because I really used to like maths as well. Used to find the certainty in mathematics very comfortable. So I came to England when I was 12, and then 3 years later, after I came to England, the revolution happened in Iran, the Islamic Revolution. And ever since I was a little kid, I was very scared of organized religion. I mean, religion didn't make sense to me. It just, I had a very mathematical mind, and religion wasn't logic enough. I'm not against religion. I don't want to take anyone's religion away from them. I understand what religion does. I understand that it's easier to go through difficult periods when you have a religion, when you believe in a spiritual thing. But it just never made sense to me. I'm quite happy with anyone having their own religion. I have respect for them if they want to practice it. What I don't like is when it gets mixed up with politics.
Yeah, and Islam is pretty much like that, isn't it? It's very constrictive as well. I remember the first time when I had doubts was when I was very young, like around 12 or 11, and we were in school and they were talking about like Hazrat Dawood, and it was just a funny name, and I said, oh, Dawood, like, I was just kidding around, and the kid next to me told me, like, don't say that. If you say that, you'll go to hell and stuff. And it just clicked, and I was just joking, like, what's wrong? So religions are usually like that, but like Islam is even worse with that, because their religions, like Iran's actual religion, that's not like that. Zoroastrianism, like, that's not so restrictive to you, isn't it?
Yeah, in fact, there was a period where I had a sort of like inclination towards Zoroastrianism. Not so much because of the spiritual side of it, but I just thought this is more in tune with our ethnicity.
Exactly.
This is more of an Iranian religion. Islam was just alien to me. It was like it was something that maybe it was suitable for the Arabs, but it didn't sort of like comply with the Persian culture. Whereas Zoroastrian, conformed with the Persian culture. But then I went to they used to have a Zoroastrian temple in Hampstead. It's moved now. It's not there now, but they had a temple there which had been there for many years. And I went there for a couple of sessions, and the amount of superstition and the nonsense that was taught there as well, I mean, that was just as off-putting as well. And I sort of realised that, look, religion is not really for me. But like I said, I don't try to take anyone's religion away from them. I don't try to insult anyone's religion. I understand that some people have spiritual beliefs and they're more comfortable like that, and I'm okay with that. But I just, when it starts getting mixed in with politics, it's very damaging. It's very bad, and it's also bad for the religion itself, because in politics you will fail. The failures will then be attributed to the religion.
Exactly.
So it damages the religion. I mean, if you ask any Iranian who lived, who remembers the Shah's period, and if you ask them, were Iranian people more religious under the Shah or now, they would say under the Shah. Because
there was a spiritual side, they were just
because it was just a spiritual side. The other people that sort of like were religious, they didn't come and tell you like what to do, how to dress, what to drink, what to eat, how to urinate, because in I don't know if it's like that in Sunni Islam, but in Shia Islam, you can't urinate standing up.
It's
if you're a man.
Same.
So you don't have urinals in Iran. So even to
Yeah.
that level of like, telling you how to piss,
Yeah.
you know,
That is taking the piss,
and
isn't it?
we didn't have that before.
Yeah.
So everyone was to their own.
Mm.
We had Jewish friends, we had the Jewish neighbor, we had Baha'i friends, we had Christian friends,
There were a
Armenian.
lot of Jewish people that used to live in Iran before that time.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, our neighbors were Jewish. We had a Christian doctor. She was a Syrian Christian.
Mm.
We had a lot of Armenian friends. Religion was never an issue. We were all
Mm.
Iranians,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, and we celebrated each other's occasions.
Yeah.
And obviously there were other occasions which were just like purely Iranian, like the Iranian New Year, the
Mm.
first day of spring,
Mm.
which everyone celebrated. It wasn't a
Yeah.
religious celebration. It was, it was across the board,
Mm.
and we all mixed in together. And I don't ever remember, you know, um, someone's religion being an issue
Mm.
for anyone. No one came and asked me, "What religion are you?" I never really went and asked anyone
Mm.
what religion they are, or and then depending on what answer they give me, how to
Yeah.
behave towards them. It was just really, really totally irrelevant.
Mm.
So yeah, so I watched with horror what was going on in Iran from a distance because I was here. I watched. I saw a bit of it because when it was first beginning to start, I was in Iran for the summer holidays, for the school summer
Mm.
holidays.
Mm.
So I saw a few demonstrations in that, but at the time, it was hard to predict whether it was going to um, uh, gain momentum. And I mean, the biggest demonstration up to that point, which I saw, was maximum of like 100,000 people.
Mm. That's
So
huge.
at
Yeah.
that point, it could go either way. It wasn't
Mm.
certain.
Mm.
Um, and then after the revolution, I went back to Iran a couple of times again for school holidays, and I didn't recognize the country anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't recognize the country, and I didn't recognize a lot of the people that I knew before.
Mm.
They had changed so much.
Yeah.
I felt I was in a different country. I felt at home when I was in England.
Mm.
And so I remember coming back. It was actually an Easter holiday, my last time that was in Iran in 1980. So it was just a few months after the revolution. Revolution was in February 1979. So, sort of like just around about 11, 12 months after the revolution. And that was the last time I went to Iran. I decided to stay here, and I haven't been back since. And then I've been following up what was happening there because you still have your roots there.
Yeah.
You can't sort of like completely disengage.
Yeah.
And I tried to sort of like be active, sort of like connect with people who were trying to fight the regime there, try to be their voice, do the sort of things that you could do here that they couldn't do over there. And for a while, I would describe myself as an Iranian expat activist against the regime.
Mm.
But about 25 years ago, I could see the signs that, hang on a second, what was happening in Iran is now happening over here. It's repeating itself. Oh my God, how could this happen? And now, to be honest with you, I'm just more concerned about what is happening in this country. Because at the end of the day, I consider myself a British Iranian.
Mm.
My children are born here. They feel British. This is their future. Their future is here. And I don't want them to go through what I had to go through. I want them to live in the sort of England that I remembered, a secular country, a free country, where people didn't have to look over their shoulder after what they said. They didn't have to worry about the consequences of what they thought. That's fantastic feeling that you get when you come from a despotic country to a free country, which I'm sure that you understand what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
I want my children to feel that, and just more and more, I'm getting worried about what's happening in this country.
Yeah, this is the same thing as well. Like the reason why I came over here, but I was in my early 20s, and I had left Islam, and obviously, I had gotten threats and stuff as well, and I had gotten some inclinations from some of the mosque and stuff. Like, so I thought, like, it's not the best, not the best place to be. There's no way that one person can change the mind of 230 million people, and who are, about Pakistan. Majority of the people are illiterate. They're not just uneducated; they're illiterate. They don't even know how to read or write their name. So it's
Right.
very hard to convince them of the logical things. It's very easy to convince them of the emotional stuff. So
The
that's
thing
why I
that
came
the
over
thing
here.
the thing that was strange, Momus, in
Hmm.
Iran, it was actually the educated
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
that had suddenly lost their track.
Hmm.
To be honest with you, the more ordinary, uneducated people, they couldn't understand what was happening.
Yeah.
But it was because the Shah was very keen on modernizing the country, so he was very
Hmm.
keen on sending students abroad to universities. Most of the Iranian students who were at universities in Europe or in America, they were on government scholarships and that. But they were coming to European universities and American universities in the 60s, where the universities were predominantly taken over by left wings. And they were coming back as Marxist Leninists for the country.
Yeah.
So, and then they were trying to overthrow the government that had given them the scholarship to go and become educated and
Yeah.
become doctors and engineers to run the country. And that was the really strange thing. I would speak to someone who would say, for example, had got a PhD or something in some, nuclear something
Hmm.
from some European university, and he would talk about like the sort of thing, the sort of things that you think you'd have to be really backward and illiterate
Hmm.
to believe this nonsense. You know,
Yeah.
that was the strange thing. It was a really hard to describe phenomena. How suddenly these normal middle class educated people got mesmerized by this ideology,
Yeah.
and
I think so that is the role
it
of
was either hard left ideology or the Islamic
yeah. I think
ideology.
so. It is a hard left ideology that like gives room, that opens a door for the any sort of like Islamist ideology, because I see like Islam is very much similar to communism. And
Yes,
that's why they find a lot of similarities. I know a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, but you haven't read Marxist properly." It's like I have. Right? Like, don't try to. If something is of bad seed, as it says in the Bible, or if it's a bad code, it will always produce bad results. And that's what Marxism is, and that's what Islam is.
yes,
They marry
definitely.
each other so easily.
Yeah,
That's where like more educated people can fool themselves into working against themselves, like a parasitic mind, which God's
yeah,
talked about as well.
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right in that. I mean, they're both ideologies,
Hmm.
um, and they're both anti-Western.
Yeah.
Um, in a way, they're anti-modernism,
Hmm.
um,
Anti-freedom.
anti-freedom, definitely. And the way the Iranian Marxists, most of them were actually Stalinists. I mean,
Hmm.
which is strange because in Europe, the majority are sort of like Trotskyists.
Yeah.
At least they sort of like know that Stalin was the wrong
Yeah.
one. I mean, you could argue that Trotsky would have been just
Yeah.
as bad, but at least they didn't follow Stalin. But most of the Iranian Marxists, they were Stalinists, and then the way they were quoting Marx, Engels, and
Hmm.
Stalin and all that was just like a Muslim or a Christian or a religious person would quote the scriptures.
Yeah.
You know, Marx said in this quote,
Hmm.
this, just
Yeah.
like you would say like Jesus said this,
Yeah.
or Moses
Yeah.
said this,
Yeah.
um, and in fact there was a one of the left wing organizations which still exists, as the people know it as MEK, the Mujahideen. They actually they described themselves as an Islamic armed resistance against the Shah.
Hmm.
Um, and their ideology was a very Marxist interpretation of the Quran. So, which is why they were termed as Islamic Marxists as well.
Hmm.
Um, and so for example, in the Quran, you have a lot of verses about the mustaz'afin, which is like
Hmm.
the weak, the dispossessed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they would sort of like change that to the proletariat, and they would sort of like quote a Quranic verse, and
Yeah.
the translation, you think this is out of one of Marx's books or
Yeah.
Lenin's books, because the way that it interpreted it was a
Yeah.
completely Marxist thing. And
Yeah.
then, so
I often think, like, when Marx said, like, the religion is the opium for the masses. I don't think so. He was saying it's a bad thing. I think he was saying, oh, this is how we can use it.
He liked opium, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. To be honest with you, I think actually, if Marx was alive and he could see how the left are going to bed with the Islamists, he would be turning in his grave. Yeah. It's just I don't know, very
But it's a religion that Hitler loved as well, Islam. He's often quoted as well. He said, like, he was aggrieved that the Aryan race went towards Christianity and not towards Islam, because Islam is a more warrior religion
seriously.
and stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I'll send that to you afterwards. It's a whole thing, like how he liked Islam better, because it gave them, like, he thought like it's more of a warrior sort of a religion, where it doesn't apologize for things and just um takes over lands and stuff like that. So it's sort of like all extremist ideologies sort of have a Venn diagram, where they can, because they're all authoritarian ideologies, and they like bits of each other. And then you can see, like, okay, maybe Marx might not want this or may want this, doesn't matter. The thing is, the outcome is always going to be bad when you have an ideology that is not that, because Christianity was a bit radical, a bit different. The churches took it a bit like authoritarian, some of the churches, but the ideology itself was like led by love and very different. Or giving people the choice, they need to come to Christ, rather than Christ being imposed on you. But all the other ones are sort of like, what I find is, like, you have to, if you don't believe it, you go to hell and stuff. Obviously, the churches as well have used it, but it's like, it's imposition, isn't it? Like, when someone is imposing, or when someone has started an ideology that is meant to control other people, you're like, okay, you're never gonna get good results from it.
Yeah, you see, the thing is, I think a lot of it all depends on how you interpret. If you want to use an ideology as a tool to suppress people,
Hmm.
you can interpret it whichever way you want. I
Yeah.
mean, what you just said about Christianity. Yeah, I mean, I read the New Testament, and I think this is about love and you
Hmm.
know forgiveness of the sins and things like that. But then again, there's been periods of history, the Middle Ages and all that, where the church has reinterpreted it as in the worst cruel ways.
Yeah.
We've had the um, when they went to Americas, for example, when they
Hmm.
were bashing heads against rocks to convert
Yeah.
people into Christianity, and
Hmm.
all sorts of we've had the Inquisition,
Yeah.
all sorts of crimes and everything
Hmm.
have happened, even
Yeah.
though they say they're followers of a prophet, which is preaching love and
Hmm.
forgiveness of sins. So, and it's the same if you talk to ordinary Muslims, ordinary Jews, people that are just like preoccupied with religion as their own preferred way of
Yeah.
practicing how to worship this
Hmm.
spiritual being that they wish that existed. You don't have a problem with them.
Yeah.
They don't try to sort of like force anything on you,
Hmm.
um, and you just get along with them. And they have their own way, and you have your own way, and you still have a lot in
Hmm.
common with each other because you're all human beings.
Yeah.
But it's people that try to interpret these religions as ideologies that they can use as tools
Hmm.
to suppress everything, and think that their ideology is superior
Yeah.
to everyone else's. I think Václav Havel once said about ideology. What was it that he said? He said, um, when ideology becomes used as a way to not serve humanity,
Hmm.
but to suppress and control humanity.
Yeah.
You know, this is the
Hmm.
political version of religion. This is what happens with religion
Hmm.
when it gets mixed up with religion, with ideology.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what's so
Most
dangerous.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what I found as well. Especially with, like, because I have more experience with Islam. I have found that within Islam, that it is so toxic as well, because, and you can map it the same with communism as well. And I sort of sometimes wonder, well, moderate Muslims are not like that, because I know my parents are not like that. But at the end of the day, like, if you separate the people from the ideology, then you sort of think, like, what is the goal of the ideology of Islam and of communism? Is to control, right? So whether you're moderate or not, whether you're a moderate Marxist or not, right? The end goal of the ideology that you're following is to, control people, right? So the moderates actually kind of, in my view, moderates keep it alive, and then there's no guarantee that a moderate Muslim will produce moderate kids, and their kids will be moderate.
Well,
So
there's
that
no
becomes a problem
guarantee
as well.
that a secular person
Hmm.
can raise secular uh,
Yeah.
kids. I mean, kids go their own way.
Yeah.
There's no guaranteeing to that at all.
Yeah. That's why you have to have an environment where, like, you're not giving away to ideology so much that they take over. So
Mm.
why do you, coming to that, like, why do you think it's happened in Britain that we have let ideologies that otherwise, if we were sensible enough, like ideologies like Islam or something, we would reject it completely, that they should not have any foothold over here? Why have why have Britain just let it happen? And why has even the king, if you read about it, he's the patron of the Oxford Islamic Center for Studies as well? Why is that? Why is this happening?
Well, let me give you a few anecdotes
Mm,
that explains, like, how I saw it all coming up, and then
mm,
I'll give an
yeah.
analysis of it. The first time I noticed something is going wrong in this country was actually I was in Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park,
Mm, mm,
and it was year 2000. And I'll tell you why I remember it was year 2000. So I just bought a camcorder, and I wanted to film something with it. I wanted, some sort of subject to film.
yeah.
So I told a friend of mine to come along with me. So because I thought if we go to Speaker's Corner, there's always a few fruitcakes there, and it'd be like,
Yeah.
it'd be a good subject to film. We'll find something amusing, something funny, and
Mm,
all that. And for sure there was plenty of them around. And then there was a group of Islamists there, and one of them was on this pedestal preaching. Um, I mean, if you go there now, the
mm,
majority is probably with the Islamists, but back
yeah.
then it was
Mm,
just a minority. It was just them.
yeah.
Everyone else was all these other things. Um, there was one guy that was complaining about, that everyone's talking about sexual revolution, why he's missing out on this sexual revolution and he's not getting any. Uh, all these crazy people and that. And
Mm,
then there was this like group of Islamists, and one of them was on the pedestal and he was preaching, and he said something, and I just challenged him. And suddenly he came off the pedestal, he came up to me, and then I was surrounded by about 50 people.
mm,
And he looked me in the eye. He said, "Either you take back what you say, or I'm going to smash your head against those sharp railings behind you. And I don't care if I go to prison because I'm doing it for my religion." Right?
yeah.
And I'm looking around looking for my friend. Where is it? and I can't find him. And this friend of mine. It was actually an Iranian guy um, who'd got a medal for bravery in the war with Iraq, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't find him. He disappeared. And afterwards, I said to him, "Like, what the fuck were you? Like, what happened to you?" And he says, "Oh, well, what can I do against 50 people?" I said, "Well, you could have at least called the police or something." And
Yeah.
I've never talked to him since. Anyways, so and I remember that we were having a party at work to celebrate a millennial project. That's why I remember it was year 2000.
Mm,
And I was telling my project manager that I'm worried about the rise of Islamism in this country.
mm,
And he just laughed at me and said, "It will never happen here."
yeah.
Same sort of thing. Rewind the clock back to Iran. The first time I ever heard Khomeini's name was we were going from school to the bus terminal. On the way, suddenly there was this group of people that attacked the bank. They'd smashed the windows, and then they were running into the side streets and
Mm,
getting away. And we were just like watching, and I was completely bemused. And I said, "What was all that about?" And one of my friends said, "Oh, there must be Khomeini supporters." I said, "Who the fuck is Khomeini?" And then he told me who Khomeini is, and that he's this cleric
mm,
who's in exile, and he wants women to sort of like wear the mandatory hijab and this and
mm,
that. And I laughed. I said, "It will never happen here."
yeah.
So whenever I hear "it will never happen here,"
You
alarm bells
remember your own words.
ringing. Yeah, but I think what happened here was the Islamists realised that they can exploit the all this democracy and religious tolerance and this coexistence loopholes to their
Mm,
own advantage. and the British were just too soft, and they didn't really know anything about where radical Islam can lead to, and how quickly it can grow. And then you had the left going to bed with the Islamists, which we've talked about here, and I think I've talked many times about it, and I think a lot of people have talked about it before, which again is sort of like parallel with what was happening in Iran, because in Iran it was the same thing. The left went to bed with the Islamists, and by the way, the left got annihilated after the Islamists came to power, right? What the left in Iran suffered was worse than what the Ancien regime officials suffered after the revolution.
But
In 1988,
but
5,000 mostly left-wing prisoners, political prisoners, who mostly actually served their prison sentences, they were summarily executed.
Yeah.
And they're in mass graves.
Yeah.
But their parents don't even know where their graves are. Right,
Yeah.
So
but like as they say, like if communism wasn't done right at that time, this time it will be different.
Well, someone said to me that because everyone thinks that the Shah was some sort of like Western puppet or something, and this is what the left was trying to propagate, but he really wasn't. And someone said to me that Jimmy Carter wanted certain things from the Shah. He wanted a war with Iraq, so that the Western the arms industry and all that can start sort of like recuperating, and the West to get out of recession. Bring the oil price down to bring the rampant inflation in the West, and to crack down on the growing left in Iran. And then there was a fourth one which I can't remember. Now, I don't know. I can't substantiate what he said, right? Whether this is really true, and I haven't seen any evidence that this is really what the Americans wanted from the Shah, and the Shah refused. But all these things happened after the revolution.
Yeah,
we had a war with Iraq, 8-year war with Iraq. All these people died. Not 1 inch of land changed hands.
Yeah.
All it did was just like destroy both countries. Who gained from that? Everyone else who was supplying both sides weapons.
Yeah.
The price of oil came down after the revolution. The left in Iran got annihilated. So whether there is any truth in what that guy told me or not, well, that is what happened. But the left going to bed with the Islamists is one parallel with what happened in 1979 in Iran. And I think this has been mostly covered. The other side of it, the other parallel thing, Mummers, is the incompetence of the establishment. So what we had in 1979, the reason that revolution grew momentum and wasn't stopped, because the Shah was ill. He couldn't make a decision. And the way his system worked was all the decisions came from the top. If the head wasn't making decisions, no one else could make decisions. So we had this really incompetent establishment. For example, there was an arson attack against a cinema. Well, there was arson attacks against many cinemas because they were seen as symbols of Western culture and all that. So the Islamists would go and firebomb a lot of the cinemas. But there was one cinema where the cinema goers got trapped inside the cinema, and these were including whole families, children, completely got burnt, charred to in the fire because they couldn't get out. The doors were locked, and they couldn't get out. And that was done by the Islamists. But the rumors then spread that it was the Shah's secret service had done this to give a bad name to the Islamists, right? And the guy who'd actually carried out the arson attack, he didn't actually mean to kill the people. He meant to set the just outside the doors on fire, right? But the fire quickly spread, and it sort of engulfed the people inside. So he had this huge guilty conscience, right? And he confessed to everything, right? But the establishment was so incompetent because they kept wanting to appease the Islamists. They were told that, if you say that it was the Islamists are going to get really, really mad. So they kept it quiet.
Yeah.
They could have brought him and said, look, this is the guy. He's admitting everything. He's saying exactly what happened, who provoked him, who told him to go and do it, how it happened, and finish all those stupid rumors that it was these Shah's secret police and who set the cinema on fire and caused more than 400 people to die. And they weren't doing it because they were trying to appease the Islamists. That incompetence of the establishment is again another parallel that I'm seeing there.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, I mean, we have this thing called the new National Security Act. I don't know if you're aware of it, but
No.
in July 2023, the new National Security Act got the royal assent. Tom Tugendhat was the Minister for State Security at the time. And he produced this clip. It's on his YouTube channel. You can see it on his X account if you do. He said how this is going to be a game changer. And the idea was that the security forces were saying that they could only arrest someone if they were engaged in some sort of terrorist activity. But if they were just peddling the influence of a hostile state or projecting their soft power in this country, they didn't have any legislations that they could use to act upon. So the new national security is supposed to give them that. So Tom Tugendhat produced this clip saying, like, from today, this is now an act. This is now the law, and the security forces have full powers to arrest anyone who's acting on behalf of a hostile state if they haven't read. Because part of this new national security thing is Foreign Influence Registration Scheme, FIRS. So if anyone is peddling influence or trying to spread the influence or the soft power of a hostile state, and Iran was specifically mentioned, and Russia and China, but Iran was even had more priority than that. If they haven't registered with this scheme, they could face up to 5 years jail. That was July 2023, right?
Yeah.
Not one person has been arrested, and Tehran's outlets in the UK have grown more and more and more. Right? Now, Dan Jarvis is now the new Ministry of State Minister for Security, right? Just recently, he did another video clip as well, going on about foreign influence registration scheme and Iran influence in this and that, like, you know, and that they can now be arrested if they haven't registered, right? But first of all, no one knows where would they go and register, right?
Yeah.
So, okay, you know, you say like this, but where they got to go and register? Secondly, just a few days after that video that Dan Jarvis posted on his X account, we had the Al Quds Day rally, which is an annual rally organized by Iran, right? And there were people in the rally with pictures of Khamenei, flags of the Islamic Republic of Iran. I've got a video of this guy who's praising Khamenei, saying, "I'm at your command." I mean, how much more do you want in the open?
Yeah.
And every policeman that I was talking to that were policing that protest, they had no idea what new national security thing was. They had no idea what foreign influence registration scheme was. So we have this crazy situation where the legislators keep coming up with legislations. We have these officials that keep going on about this legislation is a game changer. And the security forces on the ground have no idea about the legislation. And nothing is getting done because no one in the establishment wants to be the one to push the button. I'll go and talk to a lot of politicians, MPs, etc., right? And I'll tell them about Tehran's influence and, you know, the Iranian outlets and, you know, all the misdemeanor that they're doing here and everything. And they're all horrified and they're all like, you know, shake their heads and agree with you. And then you say, okay, so what are you going to do about it? And it's just nothing.
Yeah.
No one wants to be the one to push the button because they're all scared of the consequences. Look, we had the Justice Minister in the previous Tory government. What was his name? It was the MP for Finchley as well. Mike Freer, I think.
I think so.
He resigned because the intimidation that he faced from Islamists, right? From the letters he was getting, from the phone calls he was getting, the tried to set his office on fire and everything. If the Justice Minister is too intimidated and he resigns, what chance is there for me and you?
Yeah.
You know?
And nothing is done about it. Like, I just don't like, you know, when they prescribe Hizb ut-Tahrir as well.
They just changed their name into something else.
Well, that's what exactly, like, because what I'm thinking is like they're not a club. Like, you're just telling them, oh, you can't have this name now.
Yeah,
You're not. What about the members of the club? No, you just can't have this name. You
yeah,
go play with another name now.
yeah.
They're just gonna keep on changing names. What is a name to them? You have
Just
to actually get the people.
just this past Sunday, the Times of London published a story about this UK registered charity, which is affiliated with Iran. I mean, one of the trustees of the charity has been on several trips to Iran.
Mm.
Um, and the most recent one, she actually went there and she got an award for
Wow.
spreading Iran's soft power. I mean, you can't, and this is all documented. The Iranian state media
Mm.
filmed it, and it's
Yeah.
all in the open. Um, and this is actually the third time the Times of London has printed this story about this charity. The first time they went on about it
Mm.
was in January, right? And you got the Charities Commission who's just saying, "Oh, we're investigating it,"
Mm.
right? Forget, nothing about this foreign. I mean, how much more do you want a blatant disregard for this foreign influence registration scheme and this new National Security Act? For someone, for a trustee of a charity in this country to go to a hostile state that chants death to Britain, to
Mm.
receive an award from an IRGC general for spreading Iran's soft power, right? What more do you want to shut down
They
this
don't even
charity?
want to hide anymore because
No.
they
And,
don't
and,
have
and
to.
all that happens when the Charity Commission says, we're investigating this charity, is that if you try to ask any questions, they say, oh, we can't comment on it because it's under investigation.
Under investigation,
The
obviously. Yeah.
Islamic Center of England, which is the main outlet of the Iranian regime
Mm.
here, it's been under investigation for 4 years.
Yeah.
Since then, not one update, not one decision. It's a joke,
Yeah.
you know?
So, like, because the thing is, like, when I came in 2010, right? So I came, and I was thinking like I'll get away with from Islamist and stuff, right? And I,
It's worse.
and everyone told me to go to America, but I was like, I like Britain. I like their history. I associate more with their culture, their, like, media and stuff like that. I prefer to go somewhere where I can feel at home. That's why I wanted to come to Britain. But everyone was sort of right. They said to me to go to America because you'll be more free over there and you'll have more opportunity to earn more and blah blah whatever. But I didn't care about that. As soon as I came over here, I started seeing all these Pakistanis that I was actually trying to get away from over here, and the worst ones from them. I started seeing these people from Pakistan who wear like the green turbans, right? We call them Hari Pagri people, and they are the Mohammedans. Like they're very much like their whole ideology is around profit first for them in every case. Like they are very extremist, so they want to follow every single known hadith and sunnah of the Prophet. I started seeing them over here. It's like they are considered extremists in Pakistan, right? What is going on? Like, why are they over here? And then I started hearing about like all these Pakistani people who were called Fauji's. They were, like, Fauji is soldier in Urdu, because they were illegals over here, and they were trying to do their 10 years so that their solicitor friends, other Pakistani solicitor friends, will help them and they can become legal then, right? So I started seeing like it. That was in the first year when I started seeing all of these things coming up, and the majority of the people were from Punjab. And I know in Pakistani province of Punjab, most of the sexual assaults and everyone is conducted by them. So I was like, well, what is going on? What are these kind of people? Because my family is like they're Urdu speaking, so they're more closer to Parsi people. Like, is they speak a bit of Russian, Persian, sorry, like with Urdu and stuff like that. We have a different mentality, like, educated class have a similar mentality to Persians, in that sense, but Punjabis are very 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 different from us. And I started like, I remember the first time as well when I went back to Pakistan to see my parents, and I got into Pakistan airport. At that time I still had a Pakistani passport because there was early days. I hadn't got my British citizenship yet, and there was a whole queue of people who had British citizenship, right? And they were all Pakistanis, and they were all, none of them could speak English, right? They were
There was
all in
nothing that
their
you could identify them with
yeah.
as British.
No, they
Yeah.
were all in like their village clothing and stuff, old people and stuff. And that's when I got to find out that just because they're someone's parents who went over there 10 years ago, whatever, they got citizenships through them. They don't even have to qualify to speak English or whatever. That was happening at that time. And then also I started hearing about all these schools that were madrasas, sort of school after schools that were opening up. And I remembered my dad telling me that the main reason why Pakistan went to shit
Was the
was because of
madrasas.
this. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
because General Zia
Yeah.
got in like these Saudis started opening Sunni madrasas,
Yeah.
and Iran after Khomeini started opening Shia madrasas.
Yeah.
And the madrasas went from like I think so 500 or something to 50,000, you
Yeah.
know. And I was like, well, I can project where this is going.
Yeah.
And that's when I started speaking. I was like, what are you guys doing? You need to deport these guys. I don't care whether they're born over here or not. They can be born over, they can be third or fourth generation over here. They'll never be loyal to Britain. They will be loyal to Islam and Pakistan
Yeah,
second.
it's amazing how they invest into the next generation. When Khomeini
Mm.
was first exiled, I think someone had interviewed him, and you know that he was.
The sights and sounds of
Can you,
London.
can you hear the sound? I must have posted something on Twitter. They're coming after me. Um, yeah, he was saying he wasn't sort of like taking it as a defeat because he was
Mm.
saying that my true supporters at the moment are in kindergartens.
Yeah,
You
this
know,
thing. Yeah,
he knew that he was investing in this was a temporary setback for him when he was
yeah,
first sent into exile.
yeah,
He knew that was a temporary setback for him because he was investing in the next generation of
yeah.
his disciples and his followers. And there were certain schools that were set up
Mm.
with, money from the religious bazaar merchants and that,
Mm.
which
Mm.
were different from the other normal state schools. I mean, we used to see them, all the little girls, even though they were only like 8 or 9, and that, they
Yeah,
were fully clad in that. In before 1979, when
yeah,
women were free to wear what they wanted,
mm.
well, within reason.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's amazing. And what you say about all these Pakistani groups and all that. And what about the Muslim Brotherhood, right?
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, all these Arab countries that have banned Muslim Brotherhood. Yesterday, Jordan banned Muslim Brotherhood
Mm.
as well, right? Muslim Brotherhood has been banned in Egypt. Muslim Brotherhood has been banned in the United Arab Emirates. Muslim Brotherhood has been banned in Bahrain. You can't accuse them of being Islamophobic.
Yeah.
There is a reason why these countries that are prosperous, Muslim
Mm.
countries, like Bahrain, like United
Yeah.
Arab Emirates,
Yeah.
that they've banned Muslim Brotherhood. Why isn't Britain banning it? And in fact, I heard yesterday that the top chief, the big cheese in the Muslim Brotherhood is in England and he's been given British residency
I'm not surprised.
only recently.
I'm not surprised.
Why is Britain doing? Why are
Yeah.
these officials
They'll,
destroying the
they'll
country?
be getting a UK grant next year.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know?
Well, the Islamic Centre, which is openly an outlet for Ayatollah Khamenei. I mean, the head
Yeah.
of the Islamic Center in his inauguration, they read the letter of appointment by Khamenei. I've
Yeah.
got videos of it. That it's they don't hide it
Mm.
themselves. During COVID, they were getting like the what was that money? What was it called when they were giving that money for COVID?
Oh,
You know what I mean, anyway. But
I know what you mean. Yeah, and
over
people don't know.
£100,000. Does it really matter if some staff at Harmony's outlet in London couldn't come to work because of
Yeah,
COVID? You know, did the government really have to give him the COVID relief money?
it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah,
And like when you see even the king like being the patron of an Islamic center in Oxford, and the most ridiculous things come out from there as well. And when he says as well, like everything, according to him, everything good in the West has come from Islam. You get like these narratives from the elites, and you see what's happening over here, that people can, it's becoming so obvious, and people being allowed over here. Do you think then that this infiltration of Islamists into British institution, it is by design, or that it's not being stopped? They're thinking, oh, we can use them to,
it's
like the leftists are thinking they can use them
yeah.
as they failed in. Iran this time will
It's
win.
all of the above that you said.
Mm,
I mean, the left had this idea of the Long March. I think it was
yeah.
a German left winger called Rudi Dutschke, who came up with this theory that to change the government, they should become part of the government.
Yeah.
So they had this theory of Long March, where they would gradually infiltrate all institutions, not just government, schools, media, even the church, and then from within they would. It's just like a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
And the Islamists do the same thing, but I think the Islamists have also the helping hand of all the money that they've
Yeah.
got. You've got
From
the
Qatar and
Qataris
Iran.
who've
Yeah.
got so
Yeah.
much money they can buy
Yeah.
officials, two to a penny sort of thing. Wouldn't even be surprised even if the king is in their pockets.
Yeah.
What do you do with this? We're facing a very powerful enemy, an enemy that is very, very well funded, and
Very
it's
determined.
very determined. Yeah, and loves death more than life.
Yeah.
So it's no small task, and I'm getting on a bit now, and I really wanted to spend the last years of my life just, playing golf and enjoying myself. I didn't want to become an activist again. I'm too old for it, but I feel compelled. I can't stay silent. Because I know how dangerous this is.
Yeah.
This in the beginning of the podcast, you said we were going to cover about what can be done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the most important thing to do is to wake up the silent majority.
Yeah.
Because in Iran in 1979, although, the footage and all that, they show all these large demonstrations and that, but by no means were the majority of the people in favor of the Islamic Revolution. I mean, if you take, first of all, the main protests happen in major cities. It wasn't as if like every town, every village were like, engulfed in demonstrations and all that. And then say, for example, in Tehran, the biggest demonstration that happened in Tehran, for example, was, you could say, 1 million people. If you if you want to be on a liberal side of the estimating the crowd, say 1 million people turned up for the largest demonstration. But Tehran at the time had 8 million population, so still the majority of people stay at home. And it was because that silent majority that didn't come under street, that took it for granted that things are going to be okay, that the establishment is going to stop this, the security forces are going to stop it, that it happened. And in a way, you can't blame him either, because the chief commander, who was the Shah, he just completely lost it. He was ill. He couldn't make a decision. He left the country. Suddenly he came on the TV and he said, "I've heard the voice of your revolution, and I admit to all the mistakes." What do you do when your chief commander gives in?
Yeah. You just pull the rug.
You just
from
pull the
under
rug.
the people.
Yeah. You need someone to lead you, and if your leader is just like resigned, that's it. You're forced to resign as well. This is what I see happening in this country. It's not just the left going to bed with Islamists. Many people have talked about that. Let's not forget the incompetence of the establishment.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not forget the silent majority.
Yeah.
I mean, why we got this mayor of London? Because the majority of London has stayed away from the ballot box. They didn't bother to come to vote.
Yeah.
In a way, you can't blame them either, because the Tories put up the most unsuitable candidates.
Yeah.
As they always do for the mayor. The Reform
I
Party.
think so that's for a reason as well, because they don't want to take the blame for the downfall of London, and so they don't want to fix it. They as sure as hell don't
I don't
want
know
to fix
what it is, but I mean, London was so important to win because the mayor of London has got the biggest constituency across Europe. Apparently, it's such a powerful position, much more powerful than an MP or something for some constituency. You've got the largest constituency, and you've got, you're in charge of the policing, you're in charge of, the fire, the schools, it's a very, very, very powerful position. So it was so important not to lose in London.
Yeah.
So why couldn't the Reform and the Tories just put up one candidate so they wouldn't split the votes?
No. Even Reform put like such a bad
viable candidate
to
encourage people to come and vote, because then we wouldn't be suffering this.
Yeah.
Instead, the majority of people, just like the Labour Party, this is the most minority government in British history.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The number of votes that they got, I think is similar to what Jeremy Corbyn got in 2009. It's only because like people stayed away from the ballot box
Yeah.
because people were despondent with a party that for 14 years they're giving them mandates saying do this,
Yeah.
and they're not doing it.
Yeah.
What do you expect the people to do?
Yeah.
But they still have to realise that if they just like give up and go away and become silent majority, things are just
Yeah.
going to get worse.
Yeah.
You can't
Because
give
it
up.
only takes a
If one
minority
party
to take
doesn't do
over.
the mandate that you give them, you have to go and look for another party. You have to start another thing. You can't stay away from the ballot box.
Yeah.
You know, the minute that we give up with the ballot box is the minute that we've given up with democracy, and that is really, really dangerous.
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen in this country.
Yeah. I definitely think like people like there has to be like an educational awakening of people as well, and a cultural awakening as well.
This is
Because a lot of people are depending just on politics as well. It's like, okay, you won't get the politicians that you want unless you revive the culture, and from within that culture will become the will come the politicians that you actually want. If you just gonna hide in politics and say, okay, I'm just gonna vote for this one and they'll fix my problem, but you don't even know what your problem is and how it can be fixed. So in comes Farage and he'll say whatever. He'll have talking points, but he doesn't have a plan, right? So people fall for that, and then he won't deliver, just like he did with, have done it time and again, and people like fall for it because they don't want to investigate. I think so. That's the awakening that people need. Like, you need to know how you are governed, so that you know how you can be controlled. So to defeat this.
This is why I'm spending so much time on my YouTube channel, because this is the only platform that I've got really to bring about this kind of discourse, to bring about this kind of awareness. The podcast that I have on the channel, the topics that I choose, that I normally try to choose something that's not covered in the mainstream media, or if it is covered, I'd go a little bit deeper into it, because we can't rely on the mainstream media. We've all got our own little YouTube channels with so many followers and all that. But the good thing is we're finding each other.
Yeah.
And this network is growing.
Yeah.
And hopefully this will then morph into that change in the culture. This is my objective, to change that culture, to bring about a different mindset. That doesn't let you have your enemy walk over you and infiltrate you and bring down all the good things that we love about this country. Because don't forget, this is a great country.
Oh yeah.
This is. I mean, I'm always very grateful. I'm very British patriotic. I love England to bits. I love its culture. I love its tradition. I feel very much at home here. I will do everything to save it.
I mean, and that's the way to reverse it, isn't it? Like, you can't reverse it by force, because then you'll just create. And a lot of people talk about revolution as well, and I try telling them, when you don't know what you want, when you haven't defined your outcomes as well, how you design what you actually want, then the revolution is just going to be like the French Revolution. It's going to be destructive for everyone, and those destructions will reverberate throughout generations for the future. It will destroy England. So yeah, I mean, I think so this is the best way that we find each other, and we create these cultural strongholds in a way that we have each other's back. And yeah.
And we mustn't lose hope in everything. I mean, we talk about the institutions being infiltrated and all that, but there's still bastions that are sort of like standing. I mean, look at the recent Supreme Court ruling, for example, about what a woman is. So that was a victory that needs to be cherished. And I mean, in my own case, for example, when I was arrested because the way they were trying to frame me, I don't know if you ever saw the video of my arrest and everything, but luckily there was another person who videoed it, and I mean, when the Crown prosecution saw the video, they had to drop the case. So that restored some faith in judiciary for me. It's not all lost yet. But we need to make sure that tipping balance doesn't happen. where it's just too late, and then there's nothing you can do. We need to awaken now before it's too late, and it's not too late yet. I know things don't look good. I know there's a lot of bad news and everything, but things are not lost yet. You know?
Yeah, and that is a good message to give as well. What do you think? What do you think is the future for the Middle East and Iran? Because a lot of it is weird that what's happening over there depends so much on the future of Britain. And it used to be the other way around at times, but like, it depends a lot, isn't it? Like, because the more moderation comes over there, the more, if Khomeini and his regime are defeated and stuff, and a better regime comes in, then those fundings will stop, right? So then we could see a change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think? Like, what is
So
the future for Iran?
I think just how radicalization and political Islam started and gained momentum with the Islamic Revolution in Iran in 1979 and Khomeini coming to power, and then unfortunately Iran becoming a paradigm for so many people in the Middle East, in different shapes and forms, but still very extreme and radical. The opposite will happen with the fall of the Khamenei regime, with the fall of the Islamic Republic in Iran, and it's bound to come because they've lost all legitimacy. Only about 5% of the Iranian population support the regime, right? And that 5% are because most of them are because they're paid, and it's in their interest to do so. There are very few ideological people that really believe in this regime, this government, right? However, I don't think it's going to happen through a street revolution, because you see, this is their playing ground. Street violence, cracking down on protesters. I mean, we've had so many major protests in Iran, and they've managed to crack down on all of them. They know how to discredit the opposition. They know how to divide and rule. They know how to cut out all the finances of the movements. They know how to physically crack down and how to scare the population. I don't think we can match their violence. But don't forget, Soviet Union didn't collapse because of street protests. The system just collapsed because it just couldn't work anymore. It was unworkable. And it's the same with Iran. As long as the Western governments don't keep throwing lifelines at this regime, it's going to collapse. Have no doubt about it, because how can a regime that has 95% of the population against it survive? It can't. With an outdated form of government, with an economy that is just corrupt to the core, right? I mean, during the JCPOA, for example, when there were all these like sanction reliefs and all that given to the Islamic Republic, a lot of the Western firms thought, okay, that's good. So now we've got this new open market. We can go there and we can make a lot of money. They went in and they quickly came out. And it wasn't because of sanctions. It's because of all the other things. They realized that, the accountancy methods is not the same as what they're used to. How do they declare a profit? How can they take the profit out, for example? Like, do you know what I mean? What's the taxation system like, So it's not just the sanctions. This economy is just not working. This economy is not suitable for this day and age, right? So the system is collapsing. As long as you don't keep throwing a lifeline, it's going to collapse. And when the Islamic Republic in Iran collapses, it will be the reverse of that radicalization that we saw start in 1979. Because all these idiots in the West, these useful idiots in the West, they will see, the true horrors of like the Islamist government in Iran, and how prosperous people will become in a post-Islamic Republic era. Just like a lot of the communists, suddenly they came to realize, how wrong they were with the collapse of the Soviet Union and East Europe, because they saw what was happening. They had this sort of like idea from the books they were reading that, this is some sort of utopia and everything is hunky-dory in Soviet Union, Eastern Europe and all that. And they realized, actually, we were wrong. And this will happen to the radical Islamists. They realize that, this political version of Islam that they're peddling is damaging the people, is ruining lives, and it's ruining the religion.
Is there anyone in Iran to take over?
Anyone in
Um,
Iran? What?
as in the opposition ready to take over. When
No, this is
we need a leader, right?
this is one of the problems. There isn't a
Mm,
viable, organised opposition,
mm,
but there wasn't a viable, organised opposition in the Soviet Union either, was it?
mm,
Right? There
yeah.
wasn't one in Czechoslovakia either.
Mm.
But there are certain figures that can have automatic legitimacy that
What
can
about
lead.
the new Shah? Like I hear a lot about him as a viable opposition.
He doesn't have an organised,
Mm,
viable organisation.
okay.
Um, he's more like a figurehead at the moment,
Mm,
which people can rally around.
yeah,
But he's just not good at organising.
yeah.
Um, and
But his name and his title sort of gives him that legitimacy for people to actually
he's in a
rally
better
around him.
position than everyone else.
Yeah.
But
Mm,
I've been close to him for a while. I've talked to him,
mm,
and he says to me like he doesn't want to go back to Iran.
mm. So
So
how can you? Yeah,
which I can understand. Look, if I
yeah,
was in his position after
mm,
what was done to his family, I
yeah,
wouldn't want to go back to Iran.
mm,
If things change in Iran now, I wouldn't want to
mm,
go back to Iran to live. I might go there for a
yeah,
visit or something, but
yeah,
I'm too disconnected now. You know,
yeah, yeah,
Iran belongs to the people inside Iran who fought
mm,
to get rid of this regime. But
yeah,
I don't tell people to come and follow me. I'm your leader.
mm, mm,
Yeah, that's the
yeah,
difference.
yeah, yeah. So, and you do think like what happens over there when the Islamists fall, that will have a major impact on Britain. But do you think like that impact in Britain would it be a bit explosive? The units within Britain, would they think, okay, it's time to act now, or like they'll just start doing riots or whatever because they don't have any future support, or do you think they will just disperse?
The the supporters of the regime here, you mean, or
Yeah.
oh, they will just disperse
Mm,
once their funding is cut. That's it.
yeah.
You know, there's no one that really believes in the nonsense that they're talking about. They're only
Mm,
doing it because they've been paid. Once the
yeah.
money stops, that's it. It's
Mm,
pack your bags and go on with something else.
yeah. But and like Qatar will also lose its sort of connection over there as well. So it could signal a good thing.
Yeah, Qatar worries me because
Mm,
it's a longer term thing, and it's not really being recognised as
mm,
the danger and the damage that
yeah,
it's doing, not just in the region but throughout the Europe as well.
yeah,
I mean, all these things that they're buying from football clubs to
yeah.
newspapers to media
Nobody
to
like is just picking
universities
up
and
on
that,
it. Yeah.
this is all going unchecked. Very much so, like how the Chinese Communist Party
Mm,
is
mm,
doing it. Um, but I think the collapse of the regime in Iran will give it a kickstart.
mm,
I think people will become more emboldened, realise that these despotic regimes that are trying to create havoc throughout the world are not there forever,
yeah,
and it will encourage people to stand up to them.
yeah. But I don't know, like if what happens when the people from those regimes start claiming asylum. Do we do we become a hub, like because
Well,
this has been happening for a while? We
this is
become
the
a hub
thing.
for them.
This is why they're so entrenched. Because, say for example, in 1979,
Hmm.
the officials in the Shah's regime, it was easy for them to run away, and
Hmm.
most of them did run away very quickly, well before the Islamists took over. I mean,
Hmm.
these were people that were very close to the establishment, to the Shah. They were always flattering him and everything. They were the
Hmm.
first ones to stab him in the back and leave because they
Hmm.
had somewhere to go. They could go to Europe.
Yeah.
Where are they going to go? Right?
Yeah.
They can't go to Lebanon anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
where are they going to go? They're going to go to Yemen. They're going to go where? To Iraq. This is why they're so entrenched, and
Hmm.
this is why they're fighting to the last man. This is why street violence, I don't think, can overthrow them.
Hmm.
You need to find another playing ground. Look, I mean, it's like if I go in the ring with Tyson, I'm going to lose, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's his playing ground. He's a professional
Hmm.
boxer. I'm not. If I'm in some sort of conflict with him and I want to harm him, I've got to find another playing ground, something that he's not
Hmm.
comfortable with. And we've got to do the same thing with the regime in Iran. And I think their Achilles heel is the economy.
Yeah.
They will never be able to
Definitely.
sort out the economy,
Yeah.
and that's what will lead the collapse. It's not going to be through people coming on the streets, and maybe at one point when the regime is just about to
Yeah.
collapse. But we've seen the examples of this in history. Where very despotic, totalitarian regimes, they sort of collapse, not necessarily through a violent revolution. Or street violence, but just because the system just unable to continue.
And how much do you think they are linked with Putin's regime as well? Like if their downfall over there can
Very
also
much
signal
so,
another.
very
Yeah.
much so. I mean, they're just like they're Putin's complete puppets,
Yeah.
and there could be a very good reason for this. There's strong rumors
Hmm.
that Ayatollah Khamenei actually studied in the Patrice Lumumba universities
Yeah.
for 2 years.
Yeah.
There are at least 4 sources that have said this that are completely unconnected.
Hmm.
One of them was a former Observer correspondent who was a US ambassador in Kenya,
Hmm.
who said that Khamenei had studied in Russia. Another one is a girlfriend of the first post-revolution foreign head of the Iran state TV,
Hmm.
a guy called Gokzadeh, who was a dissident against the Shah
Hmm.
in America and in Europe. And he became the head of the Iran state media after the revolution. Before he was executed,
Hmm.
he was actually sitting next to Khomeini on the plane that brought him back to Iran. Right?
Hmm.
His girlfriend, Canadian girlfriend, who worked for CBC at the time, she's written a book called A Man in the Mirrors, which is about him. It's like
Hmm.
a biography of this guy. Twice in the book, he mentions that this guy tells her that Khamenei is trained by the Russians, right?
Hmm.
And the most damning evidence came about when there was a program on Russia Today. You can still find it on YouTube, and it was a celebration of 50 years of the Patrice Lumumba University, or what they call the University of Friendship.
Hmm.
And he went on about like the history of the university, and then in the end of it, he said, of the notable leaders that world leaders that previously studied at the university is Mahmoud Abbas of the Palestinian Authority and Iran's Ali Khamenei. And that after that, it was quickly taken
Hmm.
away,
Hmm.
right? Why would they say that if there was nothing
Yeah.
into it? And all the evidence is that Putin has got some sort of hold on
Yeah.
Iran's supreme leader, that he can just like tell him exactly what to do, when to do it,
Yeah.
how to do it, and then very often, Russians, for their own interests, when their own interests rules, they sacrifice Iran, and still
Yeah.
Khamenei is completely obedient to him. This is one of the interesting things that will come out, I think, after the
Hmm.
collapse of the regime. We'll all be surprised why an Islamic Republic was so um, subservient to Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it will be very interesting. I think so. It's obviously it is going to happen in our lifetimes. And the repercussions for it are going to
I hope
probably.
so. I hope
I
so.
hope so.
My
I hope
children
so as
always
well.
joke with me, like saying, like, imagine, like, something happens to me and I pass away, and then the next day the regime in Iran has
And I'll
collapsed,
be
and
like,
you've been waiting all these years to see that day, and then suddenly, so,
it's like reaching your 99th birthday and not seeing 100.
yeah, yeah. But like I said, honestly, my priority right at the moment is to stop what's happening in England and the way things are going here.
Hmm.
I feel, to me, that's the top priority.
Yeah.
I think
I mean, definitely
the
for me
people
as
in
well.
Iran, the Generation Z, the young people in Iran, they're doing a fantastic job.
Hmm.
And they don't really need me.
Hmm.
They know exactly what they're doing, and they're going about it the right way. The very fact that despite the fact that mandatory hijab is still a law in Iran,
Hmm.
uh, the majority of women are just like defying it. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and they've managed to nullify it just by sheer numbers
Mm.
and courage.
Yeah.
How can I, sitting here in London, tell them what
Mm.
to do?
Exactly. Yeah.
When
Yeah.
they're the ones that are facing danger and they're
Mm.
the ones that are making the sacrifices, and they're actually doing a fantastic job. What can I
Yeah.
do for them other than be their voice?
Yeah.
It's so stupid for anyone, for any exiled
Yeah.
Iranian here, to think that they can lead the
Yeah.
movement in Iran. It's not our job to lead the movement
Yeah.
in Iran. That
Yeah.
movement in Iran is being
Mm.
led by itself
Yeah.
inside Iran, and they will become victorious.
And all they ask as well is like for the West to stop giving them lifelines. That's
Yeah,
it. And
that's it.
but they have too many friends in UN these days.
Mm.
All the bad actors, all the anti-Israel bad actors have a lot of friends in UN these days.
Yeah, yeah.
One what that can be put to an end as well by US, by Trump. Which is going to happen soon as well, hopefully.
I don't know. I don't know if it should pin all our hopes on Trump. I think at the end of the day, Trump is a businessman.
Hmm.
And from what I'm hearing about the negotiations at the moment, it looks like it's just going to be another JCPOA, but
Hmm.
like Trump's version of JCPOA rather than Obama's version of JCPOA.
Hmm.
Um, I don't think Trump, and I can understand why he doesn't want to sort of like
Yeah.
a military conflict. It's not his
Hmm.
job to
Yeah.
to go and overthrow a regime in Iran. It's the job of the
Yeah.
people in Iran, and they will do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wanted the Iranian officials to come to negotiating table, so he's achieved that,
Hmm.
and he wants to get a deal where he can guarantee that they won't have the nuclear weapons.
Hmm.
Um, how much he can ensure that in the deal, I don't know. I'm a bit skeptic
Hmm.
because I know how they can pull the wool over your eyes.
Yeah.
They're very crafty people with shrewdness of bazaar merchants,
Hmm.
and the Western officials are normally no match for them when it comes to negotiation and trust, and
Hmm.
sort of like how crafty they are.
Yeah.
So I'm not pinning my hopes on that at all.
Hmm.
And I don't want Trump to overthrow the regime in Iran.
Hmm.
That will happen,
Yeah.
but
But it's like
from
hopefully
from
like
within Iran.
Trump does what's best for America, and that turns out to
Yeah,
be
and
not to
yeah,
help. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, he will
Yeah.
do what's best for America, not what's
Hmm.
best for the Iranians in Iran. That's
Yeah.
not his job. That's his job is to do what he thinks is the best for Americans. And
Hmm.
let's hope he does a good job for Americans. Why not?
Yeah.
But I'm not asking him to do to overthrow the regime in Iran. That's not his job.
Hmm. 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 No, most definitely. And over here as well, like we like as I said, like we have to awaken people. Have a cultural sort of revolution in that sense, and create strongholds for whatever may come, whatever the consequences may be. The people who actually love this country and want to protect it,
Yeah,
we need our strongholds. Political, cultural, and actual physical strongholds. To be able to combat this,
yeah,
whatever's to come.
yeah.
Yeah.
And as part of that, on my YouTube channel
Mm.
later on tonight, I will be uploading a podcast that I did with a British journalist who was a captive of Hamas, and he's got first-hand experience of Hamas. So all these idiots that are marching in the streets every week in support of Hamas, maybe they should watch that podcast and learn a few things and educate themselves, because they really have no idea what Hamas is. This is no resistance group. This is no liberation group.
No.
This is a sheer terror group and
Yeah.
nothing other than that. So if
Most
they get a
definitely.
chance, please
Yeah.
watch the podcast that will be published today
Yeah.
with the,
Hopefully, like, but by the time this podcast episode comes out,
yeah,
you would have
after
already
that,
done that. So I'll put the link over here so
yeah,
people can actually go and listen to it, because I'll be listening to it today when it comes out.
okay.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
And
you, Mamas. It's good
yeah,
to talk to you finally, and
yeah, same here. And I hope we talk again. Hope we
yeah,
talk up
definitely.
again. Yeah. Yeah. And thank you everyone for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.
Thank you.